EPHPHATHA Reflections from Kadosh, Marian Ministries. Our reading today is taken from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, verse 49. I must be in my Father's house. Our reflection today is on Jesus, the model of prayer. My dear brothers and sisters, when we reflect on the culture of prayer that we have inherited in our Christian life, we see Jesus, the Lord Himself, before us as our supreme model of prayer. He is the Master who teaches us and guides us on the path of the living relationship with God in prayer. The active and living intimacy of Jesus with God the Father is clearly evident in His words to Mary and Joseph when they came to the temple looking for Him. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, verse 49, Jesus asks, "Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know that I had to be in my Father's house?" Jesus was revealing Himself. His style of living was going to be unique. Jesus cannot be an object of search in the standards of the world. The world can search, the world should search, but the world searches in the wrong places for God. So the real question which Jesus asked Mary and Joseph was, "Why were you searching for me in the wrong places? I am in my Father's house. I must be there, not anywhere else." Jesus reveals that He is in a network that the world cannot understand and the world cannot enter in. My dear brothers and sisters, here is an invitation for us too to desire to enter into a different network. Psalm 84, verse 1 and 2 tells us, "How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty! My soul yearns, even faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. I must be in my Father's house." We see that Jesus was truly in His Father's presence every moment of His life and mission in the world. The specific moments of Jesus' prayer prove the humble and trusting commitment of His human will to the loving will of the Father. "Into your hands I command my spirit." This is the last of His visible prayers that we read in the Gospels. Abba Father answers this prayer by raising Him from the dead. We read in the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 13, verse 33, what God promised our fathers, He has fulfilled for us by raising up Jesus. In the letter to the Hebrews, we see how the prayer of Jesus accomplished the victory of salvation. Letter to the Hebrews, chapter 5, verse 7. The Word of God tells us, during the days of Jesus on earth, He offered up prayers and petitions with loud cries and tears to the one who was able to save Him from death. He was heard because of His godly fear and submission. Therefore, what is the example that Jesus, the Master of prayer, is passing on to us today, especially in these difficult times of COVID-19? I must be in my Father's house. The Word of God is giving an appeal to return to the Father's house and be in His presence. The determination in the words of Jesus is rare to see today. we take pleasure in other places, not in the Father's house. There is no real thirst for the living waters that flow from the heart of God. It is just a matter of our convenience. Excuses and excuses. Almost every day we come up with new excuses. And what is the result? The greater grows the burden and weariness of our lives. There's no doubt that we end up losing the sharpness of our faith. Like Martha, we are concerned with too many things which are of course necessary to us. Only one thing was important. Everything else would have fallen in spontaneously. But Martha missed it. And we miss it too in our day-to-day life, especially in these COVID times. So the first lesson that the Master of Prayer, Jesus, teaches us today is to have a determination in ourselves. I must be in my Father's house. The second lesson that Jesus, the Master of Prayer, teaches us is we do have a role to assist the Master in His salvific work of the world. As we read in Hebrews 5, Jesus offered up prayers and petitions with loud cries, and He was heard because of His godly fear and submission. The world we live in needs people with godly fear and humility to lift up cries for the mercy of God. More than at any other period of time, COVID-19 necessitates such cries today. The work of God's salvation has to continue in us and through us. The Lord is challenging us to join Him in this divine task of salvation. Letter to Colossians chapter 4 verse 2. The Word of God asks us, devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful and thankful. Letter to Ephesians chapter 5 verse 15. Be very careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. My dear brothers and sisters, Jesus the Master has handed on to us a great culture, a noble way of life, a life of prayer. Jesus Himself is the way. He is the Master and model for us. May He help us to imitate His own example, and may the Master help us to hand on this great culture to our future generations. Amen. This is Johny Kuriakose from Kadosh Marian Ministries. Thank you.